Okay, so I enjoyed doing the paint job on the monsters that came with the game and the Kickstarter extra monsters, the sea monster, the fire giant, the frost giant, and so forth. The smaller monsters that came, I wasn't as big a fan of. They didn't stand out as much to me, so I replaced those. I replaced the Valkyrie with what I figured was a more appropriate model based on the artwork that came from a game called Confrontation. I don't think I had to repaint this one very much. A lot of these I had to repaint and customize. This one was pretty close. I think I repainted it a little bit to make it look more like the artwork. I created the Volsker Witch. She was a little bit smaller. This was a Warhammer figure that I had to cut and adjust, and I glued her legs together so she'd be in the same stance and so forth. The Beast Man was originally from two different figures that I had to cut and bash together. When they do it with the spaceships, they call it kit bash, and they take pieces from different ships and put them together. With these figures, I don't know what they call it, but I just call it, customizing or whatever. So I took half of one figure and cut it off, and half of the other figure, because this was a really great Beastman looking figure on the top, but the bottom was kind of serpentish and had an alligator tail and that kind of stuff. So I found one that was that looked more like a Beastman bottom, so I combined them together, put a little metal pin on the inside so it would stick together better when I glued it, and then I repainted the whole thing. So he's a taller, more impressive Beastman. The two dwarves, the actual dwarves from Norse mythology, the artwork that I've ever seen portraying them is kind of more true to what they had originally. They're kind of slim and kind of sort of unimpressive. So I had to find some guys that were a little more, so I found these guys, and I replaced the dwarves, and I did a paint job on them. The Dark Elves, the same thing. I replaced the Dark Elves with some Warcraft figures and cut them a little bit and repainted them. The Undead Warriors. My idea is just to make the figures all look more exciting. So anything that already looked fine, like the big figures, I just painted. But anything that was small and unimpressive, I just tried to beef it up a little bit. I had a lot of fun painting the figures, but anybody who's had this game and pulled it open and pulled it out and tried to play it probably had the same problem that I had. The reason I did this to begin with, A, I enjoy doing this for a hobby, but B, it was frustrating trying to play Blood Rage occasionally when you had two different models of each warrior. So there were 4 of one kind and then 4 of another pose. And then you had 2 mystics that were roughly the same size. And then you had the Chieftain. So there were 4 different pieces of different designs of figure that were all the same color when they were unpainted, and they were kind of confusing. And I got tired of trying to look and say, he's got a staff, or does he not have a staff? Is that the Chieftain? Is that the Mystic? What? So I went ahead and bought a full second set of all the Kickstarter stuff just so that I could take the other 4 poses out and take the 4 that were the same as these and put them in. So I combined the warrior pieces for each of these clans so that they would all be the same. So it'd be less confusion. I just wanted one type of each of the warriors. So I've got this whole other set of Kickstarter Blood Rage sitting somewhere in my house unused just so I could make these guys similar instead of 2 different poses. Then the Mystics, I decided that I wanted to specialize the Mystics and have them be represent the clan as well as the Chieftains. So I found Mystics that were part bear or wearing a bear outfit or had bear claws or something like that, and made them be a little bit larger than life. Combined a couple of different pieces, cut them and pasted them together, glued them together with super glue, and repainted them. I found a bear from a figure I had to order online. It was a white plastic bear with a different rider. The actual rider of the bear was on this figure. It had a little female rider on it. I cut her off, and because the yellow clan is a female clan, and this was a girl and she was riding something, I thought, well, this is the Serpent clan. So I found a snake, cut off its rider from a different game, Mage Knight, I believe, pasted her, glued her on there, and then that became the leader for the Snake clan. So I had a female riding a snake that worked out just perfectly for that. The bear that she was on originally, I found 2 other figures. I got the legs from somebody that was riding a horse or something, and the top half of a dwarf from Mage Knight, pinned those together to create the look of one barbarian-looking, muscular old guy with a gray beard and a big bloody axe riding a bear. So I wanted him to represent the Bear Clan Chieftain, and to have his mystics sort of look half bearish, bear shaman, half man, half bear kind of thing to represent the bear clan. So I've got all 8 of these guys the same. I've created the 2 mystics and I created the chieftain. And then a lot of people put either paint the base black and just leave it that way, or they put terrain on there, rocks and grass and that kind of stuff. And sometimes I do that. More frequently, I just paint them black. But with this set, I wanted it to be visually appealing and striking so that you could tell with a quick glance what color each character was, because just painting the outfits, there is some brown on these guys, some blue on these guys, some yellow on these girls here and there, but not enough to make it really where you can tell. The game comes with little plastic rings that go around the outside, but I thought, why not just give it a terrain? So I put glue and then sand all over that and let it dry, and then I painted the colors on top of that. So it gives it some rough terrain kind of look, but it's very easy to tell whose figures are which when you put them on the board when you do the colored terrain like this. With the Raven clan, I did the same thing. I got all the same 8 warriors. I found some guys that were mostly already like this, that's like a half raven, half man, kind of a were-raven, and I just had to do a little paint job. And on all these figures, I had to do the basing, so I had to cut off and glue and base every one of these. The chieftain of the Raven clan, I found a eagle and I painted it black to look more like a raven, and then that was a real problem. There's not a lot of people riding eagles out in the miniature world, and so I knew I was going to have to come up with something. And finally, after looking and looking, I just said, to heck with it. I'll just have a guy standing on the back of a raven and I'll call that close enough. So while this may not look like it would work with the laws of physics, it works for me. So there's this guy riding a raven. Over here, I already talked a little bit about the Serpent Clan. I found a couple of figures from another board game that I had already customized. And so these were leftover figures. And they had a serpent character coming up that just seemed to really fit. And so it applied for the Mystics. So that worked out really well. And then I've got the woman riding the snake that was pasted together from a Mage Knight figure. Each one of these, I also painted the boat to match. So I got the sails. Each sail is the primary color yellow and a little bit of the off color, and then a ring around the base. So hopefully you can tell at a glance what the ships are. And then I did a little water effect for like they were going through the ocean. So I think that worked out pretty well. I even did detail so small as to have little tiny shields of all different colors. I can barely even see them. I had to use a magnifying lens when I was painting these on all the boats. They've all got colored shields on the side, about the size of a pinprick. The Boar Clan, they're one of my favorites. They look pretty tough. And I had to make a choice of which of the 2 models I wanted to go with. But these guys standing on one leg with a boar mask and lurching forward with an axe in each hand, they were just my favorite. I just loved them. I found a couple of figures that this was a really hard one too. There's a lot of werewolves out there in the world, in the miniature world, in the gaming world that I could customize, but not many were-boars. That was pretty tricky. So I had to find some boars from some D&D figures and cut their heads off and find somebody that looked like a mystic. And this is 3 or 4 pieces glued together from World of Warcraft and D&D. And then the hat is actually from some crazy wizardology game or something that, I save all my spare parts and sometimes they come in handy. And when I put the hat on the heads of these mystics, it looks so ridiculous that I thought, I just have to do that. That looks awesome. So there's the Boar Clan mystics. And then I threw another dwarf on top of a boar. The purple chieftain is riding his boar. Over here, I have the Ram clan, which was an extra clan from Kickstarter. Not everybody may have those, but some of these were very tricky. Sometimes it takes me a couple of weeks to find the appropriate way to solve one of these problems. How do you have somebody that's half ram, half man, or wearing a ram helmet or something? Not that many exist, so I have to search, and finally I find something that I think works. So with this one, I glued 2 or 3 pieces together. I gave him a staff that kind of has a ram's head looking sort of goat's head figure on it. I found a helmet. I don't remember what that came off of, but it was a ram horn kind of looking thing, and it was the closest I could get. So I cobbled these guys together and painted them up and called them good. There were even fewer actual rams with people riding them. That figure just doesn't exist out there, so I knew I was going to have to come up with something. And as I was searching for a ram to put this Chieftain on, I found a mechanical ram from one of the old Mage Knight sets from many years ago. And I thought, well, you know, this doesn't have to be all completely historically accurate. You know, maybe this is kind of a steampunk version. So the Ram Clan Chieftain happens to be riding a steampunk ram, but he's actually one of my favorite figures because I think it's kind of cool looking. And the last clan that I customized was the Wolf Clan. I didn't have to do a whole lot to the Wolf Clan Chieftain. I think this was a Pathfinder Battles figure that was already existed riding a wolf. So I just repainted him, put a paw print flag, repainted his flag, based him, and he was pretty much good to go. These guys took a little more work. The Wolf Mystics were trolls, and they were blue-skinned, and they had tusks coming out, and so forth. And I had to do some surgery. I had to do plastic surgery on their faces, cut the tusks off, make their faces look more human, cut the staffs and change the staffs around and put them in their hand. The staff, they didn't come with those staffs in their hand. They had some kind of axe or something. I had to add the staff on by drilling a hole through their hand and sticking a staff from another figure through and painting it the right colors, and then painting the skin to make sure they didn't look like the trolls anymore, and then basing them. The first player marker has got to be something exciting, so I took a long pirate cutlass and just shaved it down and gave it a little paint job, and now I've got my Viking dagger. I always have great fun tossing that to whoever the first player is. No fatalities yet. The tree in the middle of Yggdrasil, part of that figure already existed from the Dreamblade set of figures, which are really awesome, and I've used tons of those to customize many games. The base for the tree that is the world tree, which stems from, which is Yggdrasil and stems and connects the different realms in Norse mythology, came from Cthulhu Wars. And I used the base. There was a special Kickstarter set of bases that you're supposed to put the Cthulhu Wars figures on. They were gray and they had lots of writing on the sides, Cthulhu Wars, the year, the so-and-so. So I had to take each of these bases and use a Dremel and sand the writing off of the bases and then repaint them either stone looking or gold or blue or whatever the effect was that I wanted. I also took some Sculpey or some, actually this was plumber's clay with the two colors, the gold and the blue, and you put it together, and then you can make whatever you want, and it hardens after 15 or 20 minutes. And I created the roots to continue down from the tree so that it would continue to this board has an effect where roots are coming all off of the middle as they represent the tree with the art for Yggdrasil. So I wanted the effect to be that these roots sort of, it doesn't match up exactly, but they come down and then the roots kind of spread out across the board. This token here is to represent where Ragnarok is going to happen. Ragnarok has been represented by flipping one of these over and just showing this flat cardboard, but I wanted it to have a 3D representation, so I bought an entire game just to get this figure. It was like a $12 or $15 game, and I had to buy about 6 of them and just toss the rest of the game, or whatever bits I wasn't using, just so I could keep this thing, just so I could use it for the Ragnarok tokens that I needed. Kind of ridiculous, but you know, I thought it was really cool, and it really had that 3D effect that really popped. This guy I created to show, I don't know if I mentioned that already, where Ragnarok was going to happen. So instead of just having a little marker, little small flat thing that came with the Kickstarter set on the board, now I've got this big hand reaching up out of a fiery pit to show this is where Ragnarok is going to be this next round. And then that just moves as Ragnarok happens. Let's see, I have a marker here that looks like some Viking runes or whatever that moves along and shows what's going on the different ages. And then the last thing that I would like to show you is something that worked out really cool. I didn't really know where I was going with this, but I knew that using this card for Valhalla was just not going to cut it. Finally, I found a game called Monuments. You've probably heard of that. You may even own a copy. And it comes with a plastic board that looks sort of like this. And I thought, hey, that would make a great Valhalla. First of all, I needed it to be a little larger than this card because with my custom figures, the chieftains and so forth, they take up more room. So I needed a larger space for Valhalla. So I took the board from the Monuments game, and then I put glue and sand and created kind of a sandy fighting ground kind of look to the bottom here. And I repainted the walls so that it looked like red rock, because on this artwork you've got a white castle rising up, the rainbow bridge going toward Valhalla, and then you've got red rock around the bottom. So I painted all the bottom to look like the red rock and the walls to look white, and then I took one of those Cthulhu Wars bases and a Dreamblade figure, and I painted it a solid white and glued those together to create the castle effect that you see here in Valhalla. Where would the gods be from the gods expansion? They've got to be in Valhalla too, so they're just sort of sitting around waiting to see who joins them at the end of the world. The gods I painted and put them on some of those Cthulhu War bases and just put them gold and did a little of the color that's on their card around the rim just for effect. And then we use that expansion when we're playing. But and the last thing is, because of the rainbow bridge, I had to paint a rainbow here leading up to Valhalla. So I'm really proud of my rainbow. So that is my customized Blood Rage, and it really stands out, and I've had a lot of great comments on it, and I really enjoyed making it. It took me about 2 months to do it all, not nonstop, but just here and there as I went along. And I don't even want to think about how much money it cost to get all the individual things that I had to put together to do it, but it was really a labor of love, and I really enjoyed the game, and I really love the version that I've come up with. And you can do the same thing if you just have enough patience to search out the right figures that you need, and to cut them together, to cut and paste. What I use is I've got a hot knife, which is like an X-Acto knife with an electric connection on it. It's like a soldering iron with an X-Acto knife blade attached to it. They don't cost very much. They're $10 or $15. You can order them online. You let it heat up for about 5 minutes, and then it just cuts through. You just apply a little bit of pressure, and it cuts straight through one figure. And you can lop off arms and legs and cut the figure in half, and then use modeling glue, PVC glue, and glue the figures together. And sometimes if there's a figure that's got an arm or a leg or something hanging off that you think that's not going to last, that's going to break, then you take a metal pin, and you can probably find videos on YouTube about how to pin figures. They used to do it in the old days with the lead miniatures. They would drill a little hole and put a little clip of wire into that hole, and then do it on the limb, and they would connect them together, and that would give something for the glue to hold on to, and it would make a stronger bond for the limbs to hold together. I do that a lot on my bigger custom pieces, even with the plastic, but it really helps to hold them together. So that's pretty much it. So thanks.
If somebody was trying to do, say, like the first end wash, what's an easy two-step starting space for somebody to just kind of, I know we've talked about it before as far as like just getting a quick wash to easily identify them. You had a two-step process at one time you talked about.
Yeah, if you wanted to make your figures stand out a little bit without having to go through all the process of painting them, there's some techniques, washing and dry brushing, that are very simple that a lot of people don't know about, but if they knew about it, they would probably apply it to some of their figures. A wash, they sell washes from different companies. I use, I think it's Army Painter, and it's dark wash. And you can take a figure and put some of the wash out, and then put your brush in it and run it across your figure, and the wash settles down in all the cracks and in the low places, and when it dries, it makes it stand out, makes it really look like there's shadowing. It looks like you've gone to a lot of trouble and shadowed all those little recesses when really it took you about 30 seconds. It really helps to dry brush too, where you take, you want to highlight a figure, so you've painted it or washed it or done something to it, but you want it to stand out. So you take your brush and you load it up with some paint, like say white paint, or if you've done a blue figure and you want to do a wash, like say on this guy, to maybe highlight his hair, and you want to do the white on top of it. Well, you don't have to take a brush and individually cover each little piece of that to make it stand out. You put white paint or light blue or whatever the color you're going for on the brush, load it up, and then you wipe it all off. You take a paper towel or something and just try to get every bit off of it that you can. It's almost weird. You load up the paint first, then you take it all off, but there'll be some left over, and then you just run that back and forth across the top of the raised surface and do it 10 or 12, 15, however many times it takes, and it leaves a little residue of that highlighted color on the top. So when you've got a wash down in the cracks, making it dark in the recesses, and then you've got a dry brush on the top pulling out the highlights on the top, it really gives it a cool effect. And it looks like a professional, well, I think it looks pretty good. It's not a pro-painted figure, it's what you would call tabletop standard, but it really didn't take me a long time to do this. If you want to practice with washes and with doing a dry brush, those are techniques that you can do in just a few minutes and get pretty spectacular effects, even if you're not a professional painter.